It's the Jerry Metcalf podcast where top real estate agents tell how they do it. We are at Atlanta Fine Homes, Sothebys International Realty, and excited today to have Bill Rawlings, our North Atlanta broker, who has been in the business since 2003, has exceptionally successful as a real estate agent. You were a top real estate agent, top 10 company-wide. Probably a couple of times. Was that with Jenny? No, that was with us.
In this company, I started really early in things,
yes.
And then I started my business with Jenny Pruitt and Associates.
Exactly.
We refer to it as the former company, because the Jenny Pruitt thing gets a little bit crazy.
Confusing.
There, I was in the top 35, not in the top 10, but nevertheless, I'll take it. It was good.
Incredible, an incredibly reputable company, the former company, and of course, we know we are now. So, tell us, how did you get into the business?
So it's funny. I got into the business. I think how a lot of other people get into business. It was a desire to get into the business. I had a career that was where I was making six figures. It wasn't like at that point in time that I felt like I could leave that job to do this. But truth is, what happened, 9/11 happened. The economy started crumbling. My job was no longer as secure as what it once was. And I said to my wife one day, I want to do this. And I thought, I went out and got my license. The same time I had my resume.
So now, what year was that?
This was in 2002 that I started having these conversations. We got married in May of 2002. Okay. So right after we got married, when things weren't really as secure, let's say, as you would like them to be, I said, I'm going to have my resume out there for jobs, and I'll look for what at the time called a real job. And a real job being the one that actually pays you money versus a contingency kind of thing that we're in.
Our contingency job.
Yeah, our contingency job. But just because of like a passion for thinking that I would really like this, went ahead and got my license. And what ended up happening is I got my license on a Wednesday, held an unadvertised open house that Sunday, ended up meeting a client who had been honestly in the market for 3 years, but nobody else was desperate enough to deal with her except for the rookie on the block. 2 weeks later, I had her under contract on a property. It was a 7% commission, so it was like
which
huge.
Is yes.
To have, and we closed within 45 days of me getting a license. And I got this big check.
Like, I like this.
And I was like, I can do this.
Yeah.
And she ended up also investing in properties. So I got 2 other listings off that, which kind of set me up and got the ball rolling. So my first year in the business.
Forget all those job applications. You were good.
I never looked back. That first year in the business, I sold 22 units, which was a lower price point, I will tell you, but it was about $3 million in business, which was pretty great for somebody in their rookie year. And then I was named Rookie of the Year for Jenny Pruitt and Associates. And then RE Magazine, which is sort of like our industry publication in Atlanta at the time, named me as the Rookie of the Year for the whole Atlanta metropolitan area as well. And it kind of put my name on the map to get things started. So
that's huge.
That was it.
So what was it that made you? So you hear a lot of people getting in the business. We've got, of all the people getting in the business, the stats always seem to range between 80 and 95% of people that are dropping out within the first 2 years. What was the difference between you and them?
You know what I say to people all the time, and I say it to people when they start with me. I really want to know if they need to make money. And if there's a strong need to make money, I think you'll figure out how to overcome the obstacles that are there. We make the kind of money that we make because it's not easy.
Exactly.
And people cannot do it. People think it's easy money. They think they can just, make $10,000 here or there. It is not that way at all. So to answer your question, really, it's that I needed to make money to put food on the table with family. So you figure it out. It's just, you just do it.
Exactly. So usually you're already jumping to questions I want to ask further into the interview. And this is elaborating back into what made you so successful. And now you are an incredibly successful agent very quickly. You knew how to overcome obstacles, which is really a huge component of the value we offer. Is there's problem after problem after problem, and you've got to see every problem as a solution. But on that same note, you're overseeing all of these agents. You yourself were successful. What is that common denominator in this competitive industry? Or is there a common denominator that you find? Obviously, it's perseverance. Is there anything else that sticks out in mind as you?
The word that I use, Jerry, all the time is passion. I can teach people how to do it. I can give them the tools. I can give them the guidance, the roadmap. But if they don't have the passion, they're not going to be successful. And I cannot instill passion in somebody. You either have it or you don't have it. And that is my biggest challenge as a
Mm-hmm.
broker in interviewing somebody is, can I detect whether or not that true passion is really there, or whether or
Mm-hmm.
not it is somebody who just thinks this would be kind of a fun job to do, because everybody loves to look at houses.
It's
And
so
so you got to
funny. Yeah.
filter through all that.
Well, how many people say I love to look at houses, so I want to become a real estate agent?
110% of the
Right.
people that I talk to.
And that's got about nothing.
So there's
to do
got
with
to be something else of substance that they're going to
Mm-hmm.
say. And truthfully, I really look for people who have other success in sales in the
Mhm.
past, or leadership, or things like that. This is a tough business that we're in, and you've got to
Mhm.
be able to handle rejection. You got to be able to be okay with the fact that every no is one step closer to a yes. But people are going to tell you no a lot, and especially in the first 12 months.
So you've got to
because-
have a heart and some passion, and you got to
Yeah.
have some thick skin to combine with
Yeah.
that.
And you got to be a little bit desperate to make money. I'm going to throw that in there too,
Right.
because it's
That's
not
how I
easy.
got in this business. That's what made me successful.
Absolutely, because you
Yeah.
have no choice. Those are the best
Exactly.
people in the business, the ones that don't have a choice but to be successful.
Exactly.
I'll hire them all day long.
Exactly. That's huge. Okay, we're done. Thank you. You just wrapped it all up. You just wrapped it all up in one sentence. So do you have a story? I'd love to know. This business is so much fun, and some of that is in without the good, there's not the bad, or without the bad, there can't be the good. What's a mistake or something you've been through or something you've witnessed that's a great example of how something that might look like a horrible mistake or not such a great thing going on, problem, whatever, turn into a great opportunity or something better?
I think what I would say when you were describing that, kind of what comes to mind is, first off, I don't know that I'd call any of it a mistake. I'd say that in our business, we have learning opportunities every day, and every day is completely different from the prior day. Situations happen. And in that we serve the upper tier in the marketplace, there are a lot of strange characters out there that love to look at homes priced above $10 million. Okay, they love to play,
Yes.
as I call, lifestyles of the rich and famous.
And I think when I tell people that, they can't believe it's true, but it is so. I mean, it is such a common.
So we recently had a situation where we had a prospective buyer who seemed, on some counts, to sort of check the boxes as being legitimate. Although until you see money, you never really know
Exactly.
if they are legitimate or not. But the story kind of checks out. But really what it ended up at the end of the day was a really good actor. Money isn't delivered, but you have a seller who wants to sell a house. And the seller wants it to be true. They want it to be a real buyer. So they're really willing sometimes to grant this prospect a little bit of leeway in, let's say, not having the right pre-approval letter or not showing the right proof of funds up front, because the person can talk the talk, And really what it is, they just like to kind of feel as though they have that kind of money. So most recently, one of the situations we were dealing with, we have a property on the market listed a little bit over $13 million. Seller is by no means in a distressed situation, but they have their house in the market and they want to sell it. And we ended up dealing with a cooperating broker and company who doesn't typically work in the same price point. And I think they were a bit more laissez-faire in their attitude in terms of working with timing in the contracts. When earnest money isn't delivered when it's supposed to be delivered, it's okay. There's not that many buyers out there at this price point. They're going to do it. They've just been busy. Falling for all the kind of stories that you and I know aren't
exactly.
It separates real buyers from not real buyers. And so it is difficult in dealing with CEOs of companies, letting them down gently in that, hey, this person really wasn't real, while also preserving the relationship you have with them, because they have to know that you got their best interests at heart in marketing the property. But these kind of people do come along. And so the outcome of that is that, we still have a $13.5 million listing. I think that we have proven, frankly, our worth to this seller and his wife by navigating them through what could have been a very scary kind of situation for them, and that this stranger was in their house on multiple occasions. The stranger knows the inventory of their house. They know the security system of their house and all that kind of stuff. I think that they feel like they've got really good advocates on our side. And I look at that as an opportunity for us to get more business in the upper tier, because it truly proves that you've got to have somebody doing this who knows what they're talking about.
Well, I love how you say that, because I think in every situation, there's what we like or what we think we'd like to come out of a situation. And there's always what we'd like to come out of it, but there are little gifts in between.
Right.
That if we'll let things happen and do the right thing by it, there are all kinds of other gifts
Well,
and
the
opportunities that can
reality
come
of
out
it
of
is,
that.
Jerry, when you've got a co-op agent, they are immediately looking at what the compensation is going to be for selling a $10+ million house. So they're very, very, very forgiving in what they will deal with, because their hope is that they're going to get paid
Exactly.
away.
And I think
We've
it's the
got a
agent.
relationship
Exactly.
to protect. So
Exactly.
who you co-op with and your reputation in this business is absolutely paramount.
It's kind of all you've got.
Right. And it's what I said to the seller at this particular time. I thought, I was a little bit unsure of this situation from the get-go, and I'm very glad that I did voice my concern up front before we ever let this individual in, because I feel like most people who have the wherewithal to represent a client like that are somebody that I should have a relationship with already. And if I don't know them and I've got to Google the agent, already the red flags are waving, because this is not the type of business or client that you just pop into to do a transaction with. These are people who need our expertise, have to understand the opportunity, navigate through the legal challenges, confidentiality challenges that could potentially exist, financial challenges of moving money around, whether it be international money or local money or whatever. It doesn't just move around like on PayPal, like some people do it. It's you've got to understand it and know it.
Exactly right. Well, understand the stories. You get a lot of stories about where the money is. I've heard a lot of interesting stories about.
When it comes down to that, show me the money. I want to see something that makes it for real.
Exactly.
And a pre-approval or pre-qual letter will be presented from a buyer, and sometimes that selling agent, they just want to see something on paper. And on this particular one, obviously I'm not going to disclose names, but this particular one even commented on there that it was a pre-approval letter, but yet it said funds had not been verified.
Well, and think about how many bank statements we see that are false bank statements. Right. Think about all of the documentation we see that it's unfortunately happens too often, where you see fabricated documentation, and there's certain common things about it that if you're looking for it, you know that it's there to help your client understand it. And
you'll
also
find
being
that there aren't phone numbers. It's not, you can't Google it easily. You can't find that lender if you look around. That's a lot of things, but.
And being open-minded so that we don't not missing opportunities for our clients, but just as important, being very careful of their security and taking good care of them.
Well, in this particular case, the wife was very, very concerned about her security, and ultimately she was wanting to file a police report on the whole situation. But what I said to her is, I said, look, unfortunately these situations do happen, but we have never found, in my experience, to have that ever lead to a security situation with regards to a property. It really is somebody who just
it would have
wants
never gotten that far,
or they would have done something already and not allow the doubt to prevail about their ability to do so. It would have happened instantly.
You're exactly right.
So you just kind of have to reassure them that they really got what they wanted, because you toured them around, you rolled out the red carpet for them, you made them feel special. That's what they wanted the whole time. So.
Exactly. It'd be interesting to do a statistic on how often that happens on
Which is why it's so important to work with somebody, as I said, who has a reputation to do it. Because, if you were to call one of my agents and say you have somebody do it, you're like 55% of the way in, because you're too busy of an agent to play around with somebody who doesn't have the means to do this. So
this topic starts going into the topic of negotiating. I always talk about one of the four things that are important about getting your house sold are: you've got to present it right, you've got to promote it right, you've got to price it right, but you've also got to negotiate it correctly. And in going to that, do you have any insight that you can give us on, not only are we often negotiating with our clients, but that might be number one, negotiating with other agents and negotiating an actual deal. Do you have any philosophies you can share with us? And I'm totally pulling this out.
No, that's fine. Actually, I like where you're going with it.
Good.
So here's one of the things that I teach agents all the time. I think agents oftentimes get too emotionally caught up in the transaction themselves, and they actually start negotiating and puffing up a little bit, fighting a little bit more than maybe what their clients would want, or let's say throwing out these idle threats or things like that. And I think what we as professionals need to really remember is we are representing a client, and we need to communicate the message that the client wants us to present. Now, prior to talking to the other agent, I want to have the conversation with my client, and I want to say, okay, option A is this, option B is this, C is this, D is the other. 100% of the time, I want my agents to put that in writing to the client, because guess what? They can read a whole lot better than they can hear.
Or remember.
Remember, exactly. And so when they can see the consequences to their actions, when they choose the strategy that they want you to engage in,
always
you go down that path.
Always, whether it's a formal counter on a GAR form, that's
document. But I'm talking about with your own clients too, not
exactly. Well, that's what I meant. Exactly. And communicate.
And sometimes just because you want something doesn't mean that's what your client wants. So you got to
remember that.
The moment your emotions get too involved in the transaction, you become the problem, not the solution. Which that's when brokers like myself get involved. It's because agents get too emotional with one another. And honestly, the clients could figure it out themselves. So,
and that goes back to that common denominator of what is the common denominator of a successful agent. Being in this business, we've been in the business for about the same amount of time, except I've been selling houses the whole time. but doing it for so long,
I represent millions and millions of
exactly. You see. And you get to see all the
I do
problems.
It from the 10,000 foot level where you're down.
Well, you get to see, and so I love that because we get to compare because you're ever seeing. You usually see the problems. Right. I'm seeing every day, and the thing I find is I deal, especially being in the business as long as I have. But the transactions are usually pretty smooth, and usually I'm dealing with experienced agents. And then when you find one that's not so smooth, it's usually a less experienced agent, and it's usually also a situation. It's usually also a situation where somebody has gotten themselves caught up in the emotion and all of that. But it goes back to because the common denominator of those agents that are really making it is their understanding that what I do best is represent my client's interest, not get caught up in my own agenda and my own attachment and my own decision on what I think the results should be, but on what my client wants and looking out for their best.
Ultimately, your client's paying you, but what I say, I'm president of the Atlanta Realtors Association, and so when I do orientation with new agents coming in, the biggest thing I tell them when they ask me why they have to be there that day, I said, because this is what's important. The people that are in this room are the people who actually help you make money. We're in the business of cooperating. You've got to work with people, and when you get real threatened, and if your negotiating style turns to one where you're like yelling and getting ugly and all that kind of
stuff, where's that going to go?
You're never going to get anywhere. You're going to get a reputation. It's going to set you up for failure. You've got to work with somebody on the other side of the table, not the other way around. And oftentimes, you and I both know this, we represent people who wouldn't necessarily, where you wouldn't necessarily handle the situation the same way, but you have to do what they want you to do. And you got to be able to do it with grace and humility.
Well, I think there's two things. I think it's understanding what they want, and that goes back to presenting them with their options. If they can understand, oftentimes they're frustrated because they don't like the situation in front of them. This is the client. Present them with their options and present them with the potential. So you're helping. I always say part of my mission statement is empowering my clients to be educated and understand. This is their asset and what they want to do. So let's empower them with education and understanding the market.
They have to understand the consequences of their decision too. And I think that's one thing that sometimes agents who are not as savvy will tend to do. They may go in with sort of one strategy and this is the only way to do it. Well, there's never just one way to do this. So let's go in with what the 3 or 4 different options are that could happen. And I'm not saying they all are logical, but they are options. Okay. And a seller or a buyer that we represent needs to understand what the different options are. And with each choice they make, there is a consequence. Some are more severe than others. And so from the negotiating standpoint, to me, the negotiation is more of an education with my client. So they understand and they choose the strategy to take, not me.
We have that in common. Because you're exactly right. It's empowering them, helping them understand. Because sometimes I think we all, and this goes into, some people say, that's just difficult for me. It's so easy to get emotional, so easy to get caught up in the transaction. So how do you overcome that? How do you change that? And some of it is shifting, understanding, presenting options, educating. And I always think of, when I think about negotiating, I don't know about you, but I always think of Tony Robbins. And I'll tell you why.
I was going to say, tell me why. I'm listening.
I'll tell you why. Because he gets in a room full of 10,000 people.
When you can hear a pin drop.
Right. And he gets people who just don't see things the way he does. I mean, a great example is often he deals with people who are suicidal. So he's going to negotiate with someone who's sure they want to kill them. But this is an extreme example. But there's many like this. They're sure they're depressed, or they're sure they're going to commit suicide, or they're sure that their life is horrible. And within a matter of, depending on the situation, 15 minutes to an hour, he will negotiate. No one calls this negotiating, but he's negotiating with them to see their situation and their options differently. So he's coming in and he calls it a line and redirect. He's letting them feel understood. Okay, this is your situation.
Mm-hmm.
This is how you feel. They go through that and then they feel understood and they're not defensive. You've
Right.
gotten them off the defensive. If you can get yourself off the defensive,
Right.
asking them
But
those
you know what
questions.
it comes down to? People
Right.
have to feel as though they've been heard. Okay?
Exactly.
So they have to do a lot of talking before you come up with that. With the seller, why are they moving? What's the real motivation?
Exactly.
With a buyer, what's the reason for this house? And it really helps them through these decisions. And I find oftentimes that a strategy that I think is really helpful is time. You know, I will tell my clients all the time, I don't think we should respond today. I want you to sleep on it. Because I think sleeping on it, people wake up with a fresh head oftentimes without the emotion attached to it. So, you know, it's much better to deal with the facts of a situation than the emotion. And sometimes time is all that's going to take.
And
a
not
good sleep will
regretting
make the difference.
something you did have. That's great
Right.
advice. That's great advice on negotiating. So,
because, you know, we always say the first person who speaks loses. So let a little bit of time pass.
and you know something interesting on that, because I love that. The first person who speaks loses. And
Because
just,
you're giving up. You're
well,
caving.
And some great advice I got from somebody recently. This was at a Patrick Lilly mastermind, and I wish I could remember her last name right now, but it's Maria in Long Island. She said, you know, when her clients will start venting and talking, when there's situations, this isn't typical, and this might be in whatever you're negotiating. This example was with a seller who was frustrated, and they vent, they yell, they go on, and then she just gets really quiet.
Mm-hmm.
But then the key is when the uncomfortable silence hits and they stop talking, she'll say, "Tell me more. Tell me more." And that's when it's heated, to make sure they're not stopping because it's gotten awkward, but they're really going to just get it all out
You got to
and be
make sure it's
heard,
all out.
so we can get it all out on the table.
Because otherwise, they're not going to hear a word that comes out of your mouth. You know.
That's
And you know
huge.
that here's another expression, but you know
Mhm.
they don't care how much you know until they know how much you care.
That
and
is
that listening piece
so
is so important.
True. I'm always talking about competence in this business. You can have all the competence if you want, but if you don't have the character to make people feel heard and make people feel important, none of that goes
I think that's
anywhere.
one of the hard things about our business, to be honest with you. We are dealing and juggling with a million balls at the same time, and time is not always our friend, you know. But you have to just sit down and be patient and let some of these situations work themselves out. Because if you're trying to push a seller or buyer, if they don't feel as though they've had enough of your attention, it's going to backfire on you every single time.
Well, and on that is you tell me about this, but in dealing with sellers, you know the answer to this. What is the biggest complaint people have about their real estate agent?
They don't communicate.
Right.
And yet, the reason that agents don't communicate is because they don't like to deliver tough information. So smart agents will put systems in place to force communication, even if it's just market updates or stuff like that are facts and statistics, but be upfront with it. You know, I love Brian Buffini. His line is, you know, an incoming phone call takes 45 minutes, an outgoing is 5 minutes. You choose. Where do you have the time?
Which phone call do you want to make?
Because you know what? We all do that when the phone comes in. You're like, oh, God. You know, hit, you know, delete, decline, or whatever, you know, so they don't do it. Because you want it to hit voicemail. Well, guess what? Do the outgoing call.
Do the outgoing call first and
5
schedule
minutes.
it.
Stay in front of it. And then you're much better off. And I also think it's good to try to do some of the automated communication that they'll get so that they see things coming from you on a regular basis. I remember I once had a client early on in the business who commented because they were out of town selling something for their daughter who unfortunately had passed. It was kind of a tough situation. And most of the communication I had with them was automated things that I had set up on whether it was showing activity, feedback, things going on in the market, really just engage technology as much as possible. And their comment at the closing was how I kept them up to date on what was going on all the time in terms of communication. Wow. And it kind of was like this aha moment for me because, Jerry, I really hadn't done it in the normal sense of what you and I would think about in terms of picking up the phone or texting. It was systems that were in place. And I think successful agents have got to have it because you're managing so many different clients, relationships, and listing at a time that things have got to be automated to some degree or you're always going to play catch up. And people are going to be upset with you.
So give us, what are some of do you have a top 3 or even a number 1 favorite tool for automating?
Well, one of the things that I like to do, and I'll say this from a prospecting standpoint, I know your viewers are from all across the country, but say in your local multiple listing service, there's always a tool set up for buyer prospects. Okay, there always are,
Mm-hmm.
so that they can be notified of things. Well, I want you to think about that in a different vein, and I want you to set up every one of your sellers as a buyer prospect.
Oh,
Okay, so then they're going to get the information on their
updates on
market at the
exactly
time.
what's going
And so
on.
let's just say they get that automated update that the neighbor's house has gone under contract. They're going to be mad as a hornet that theirs hasn't gotten done.
Mm-hmm.
The fact is, they're going to get that information from you on a real-time basis that it has occurred. Okay, you're also going to get it. It allows you to text them and say, hey,
Mm-hmm.
I know you've seen Tony's house has gone under contract. Are you available today at 4 o'clock? Okay.
Exactly.
It allows you to
It's huge.
strategize and then deal with the facts of the situation that, hey, Tony's house has gone under contract. Did they look at ours? Why did they not look at ours? What did they like about Tony's more than ours? And really have that marketing conversation. Do we need a price reduction? Do we need it staged better? What's the, what
are
is the
things we
reason
can
that we
do?
didn't get picked?
Mhm.
Or is it just that house, your house is just not the right one for them? You just don't know. So that's one
Mhm.
way to do that. But the other way, from a prospecting standpoint, is that I encourage my agents all the time to pick out your 10, and 10 is sort of a random number, Jerry, but
Mhm.
pick out your 10 clients that you think could be your best referral sources and set them up as prospects as if they were a seller for their own neighborhood or area. Because really what you want to do is just communicate with them market value. Everybody wants to know what their house is worth and what's going on in the market. We also all know that buyers are liars and sellers are storytellers. So what they're hearing on the street from neighbors is never the facts.
I've never heard sellers or storytellers. I'm going to keep that
Okay,
and use
keep
it
it.
because it's so true.
I borrowed it from somebody, so it's a compliment
Right.
to somebody along the way, but it is so true. People automatically will say that their house sold for what it was listed for, which guess what, is not always the case.
Mhm.
But I want to be the one to communicate that information as opposed to
And the
coming
story
from
behind the
somebody else.
story. There's a house that might
Exactly.
sell for list price,
Right.
but did you know it was furnished?
Correct.
It was sold furnished.
Right, or what the situations are.
Right.
But
Or did you
as
know they
long
got
as
a
we
free
are the
lease
person
free
delivering
lease option
information
or
to
something.
them,
Right.
where I think it's most important is doing it with people who are not actually in the market at the time. Because I want people to have thought of Jerry Metcalf when they go in the office that day and run into her in the kitchen and say, hey, oh my gosh, my neighbor is, found out today they're looking to move. I need to find an agent.
Well, there's
Jerry Metcalf's name needs to be at top of
well,
mind.
and now you're talking about referrals. There's so
right.
much thought in this business about going after, asking for business all the time. What about the referrals? What about
And that's my
delivering
point.
some value?
So
Well,
how
that's
can
what I
you use
mean.
technology? This is
That's
free
exactly-
technology.
exactly.
We spend a ton of money to pay for referrals, buy referrals, pay for ads, all this kind of stuff. What I'm talking about is free. So I really push it with people a lot because it's out there and it's the information people want. And it's
Mhm.
I refer to it as like a drip campaign. Information only goes out when it is pertinent to them. They're not getting things other times. Now, I'm still a big believer of the Buffini system, mail monthly, call quarterly, visit annually. Not changing that at all. But I'm talking about real-time sensitive information that affects people personally.
Mhm.
That, to me, can be the one thing that somebody can do to really move the needle in their business.
That's huge. Well, it's Jay Cooper and I were talking on this podcast the other day. He's awesome. And he said, there's you can buy all these leads on Zillow. There's all this stuff you can do. And the power we have, it's exactly what you're saying, the power we have with our knowledge, our relationships, our sphere of influence can do more than any $1 billion Zillow budget.
Right. Well, you know what it is? It's the difference between some active marketing and all this passive marketing. We pay money hoping people come to us instead of going to them. Identify who some of these people are. Take them out to lunch. Take them to dinner. Find out what you can do for them, and they in turn will want to help you
Naturally,
out.
it's the law of reciprocity.
Absolutely.
Exactly. We all live by that.
Pay it forward is another thing if you want to throw that
true.
expression out.
That's what's amazing in our lives, how much I find the more I just pay it forward because I enjoy it or it just feels good to pay it forward, it comes back. It just
I think some of our top agents in our marketplace have become the best that they are because they are a resource for other people.
Mm-hmm.
And whether it's a resource for vendors for different things, or they're just connected and they know, hey, so-and-so can help with this. Be that resource for other people so that you become something that is necessary in their lives. They're not going to forget about who you are.
Exactly.
The other thing I teach people all the time is there is a concept called shelf of mind. Have you ever heard of what shelf of mind is? Okay. In any particular product category out there, and true marketing studies have determined this, is that the consumer can really only handle 5 names or brands of any particular kind. And after that, it kind of becomes gray area. So there's a real estate agent on every corner, right? Mm-hmm. How are you going to be one of the 5 names that they remember? And the analogy that I usually make is to laundry detergent. And so here's the example I use with teaching this all the time to people. I will say to new people coming in, I'm going to give them a blank piece of paper and a pen. And I'm going to give you 60 seconds.
This is fun.
And I want you to write down in 60 seconds every brand of laundry detergent you can think of. Okay? Now you realize they're like rattling a few off and then they're stuck at 20
I could think of like
seconds,
one.
30 seconds.
Yeah.
Okay, Jerry, which is the one that you could think of?
Tide.
Do you know that 100% of the people who do this put Tide down? Why is Tide number one?
I do not know.
Tide positions themselves, first off, in the grocery store at eye level. They pay for that positioning, for that shelf. But they're consistently in your face on the marketing front. So you've got to, in real estate, to be successful, you've got to be the Tide.
You've got to be the Tide. You've got to find a way.
What you probably don't realize is that Cheer is the same product with a different scent.
Well, Cheer was the other one only because my mom used it on my clothes as a kid.
Well, then people
That's the only reason. I don't even remember seeing Cheer. I don't even know if it's in the grocery stores anymore.
But when I do this test, and I've done it now with hundreds of agents, randomly you'll have some superstar who'll come up with 8 or 9 names. Some are 2 or 3, but I promise you it averages out to 5 all the time. And 100% of the time, Tide is on there. And when I say, which brand do you think everybody has on their paper? It's Tide. But what it is a strategic marketing campaign that Tide does. It is consistent branding. It's very timely, and they have made a name for themselves as being quality.
Well, eye level
they're not always the
grocery
most
store,
expensive, but
they're strategic
yeah.
because strategic, eye level, in the grocery stores. All that, I had no idea. I didn't know that was one of the reasons
why. So
why
think about it and go look. Everything that's eye level is the brand they've paid for that positioning. You will never find Tide on the bottom shelf. It's not going to happen.
I wonder where
Cheer
is.
It's below Tide, lower.
Wow, that's fascinating.
Mm-hmm.
That's great. When you got into this business, I don't know if you had time for an aha. You were so successful so fast, but what was your biggest aha, and or what do you see real estate agents' biggest aha becoming when they get into this business?
Well, first off, people think this is really, really easy to do, and so the biggest aha is, oh no, it's not that easy. I'd say another aha, we always laugh about it in this business, we get our license and it's not necessarily easy to pass that test. A lot of times people have challenges with it. And yet all the stuff that they learned or that we had to learn in school doesn't really apply to this.
I'm not sure I would pass the test
I'm
today.
telling you, we're in a sales-based business and we negotiate and work with people. We are Dr. Phil more than we are attorneys writing contracts, We know that
we're kind of never attorneys, right?
The wife is the one who makes the business decision when it comes to which house they're going to buy. But in the car, when you're driving around, you've got to be the person who can navigate the relationship between the husband and wife, because what he wants and she wants are always different. You've got to be able to get them on the same page, and how can you do that? And so I think we're psychologists
What's some advice on how to do that you can give us, if you've got any? If you can
I definitely have one. It's kind of corny. I have all these corny stories, but this really works. So, first off, never, ever, ever show the best house first. Ever. It needs to be number 3 or number 4.
Because we get criticized for doing that, but it's just the truth. Because otherwise you give our job is to give them some perspective, and there is no perspective.
Right. It will not be the right house if it's the first one that they see. Ideally, I think it's number 4 person is when they see. But let's say they're in the first house, they've looked around. You're not going to tell them you're going to do this, but you want to separate the husband and the wife in the house. And you're going to have this conversation with the wife. You're going to say, okay, I need you to tell me on a scale of 1 to 10, what's this house for you and why? And I'm going to go in the other room and ask the husband the exact same thing. I'm going to bring them both together. Okay? They will already have had their answers because I've told them separately. And they have to say to each other what their ranking is.
That's brilliant.
Okay? And what that has done, it has actually got the two of them communicating. Because they have not communicated up to that point. He wants the man cave, she wants the kitchen.
That's brilliant.
They haven't heard each other say it, so they got to hear each other. Okay, so then together they can. You try to get them to agree on. Okay, so together we average that number out, and let's just say house number 1 is a 7. Okay, we're going to stop talking about them. We're going to go to house number 2.
Right. Okay.
In house number 2, I don't need to play the game
That's
the same
so
way.
Fun. Yeah.
All I need to do is play the eye doctor game. Then better 1, better 2. Is house number 2 better or worse than number 1? And you ask each of them that. If both of them say it's better, I don't ever want to discuss house number 1 again.
Ever again.
It is irrelevant.
Ever.
Because I can't bring the kitchen from house number 1 to another house.
Exactly.
It's not there. So if house number 2 is the best one, then we go to house number 3. Is house number 2 better or house number 3 better? You've always got one horse that's in the lead. And I joke using a horse racing analogy, being that my family's from Kentucky. But there's always one horse that's in the lead. And guess what? By the end of the day, after they've seen houses 3, 4, and 5, they are reinforcing that one of those is the best house because you're comparing it and improving each step along the way.
I mean, and you're making them communicate in a fun,
they have fun
logical,
with it, and
efficient way.
You don't show 50 houses this way. The reason agents show 40 and 50 houses is because they do a horrible job of communicating with them and of getting them to communicate with each other.
One another.
The key is getting them to engage with one another. Most people have been to the eye doctor, so they know that better one, better two, when they're flipping to try to find a prescription. So it's that kind of analogy. But what's going to happen in that original dialogue at house number 1 is when you ask the question why they rated it a certain way, you are going to find out immediately what the hot buttons are for the husband and the hot buttons are for the wife.
And you're going to get them talking about it in a non-confrontational
right. And then
way.
in house number 2, the wife's going to realize, hey, that man cave's really important to him. So, I can understand that as long as I can get my kitchen.
I love that.
So it really does work.
That's great. Okay, so I want to roll you through 3 questions that'll really bring this all together for us. Number 1, if you had, I don't know, man. You just hit it. You didn't even need $200 for my $200 question, but I'm going to go.
I don't know about that.
If you had some advice for yourself, for anybody starting over completely, brand new, don't know anybody, no connections, somebody just lands you on another planet in a city, except they all do speak English, and your shelter and food are taken care of, what would you do with that $200 to make sure you're a successful real estate agent? Or tell somebody
Isn't that an interesting thing? I tell this story all the time, Jerry, that Margie Stockton, who is a super
Yes, I think she's retired now, by the way.
She lives in Seattle, and she'll never retire from real estate. She's retired, but she sells real estate now on the coast. I love Margie.
She loves it.
You know what she used to tell people to do to be successful in our business?
What's that?
Get your license on Wednesday. On Thursday, go out and buy the biggest Cadillac you can buy. Friday, figure out how to pay for it.
I'm not giving anybody that advice. But you're probably right. That's some scary advice.
Because you got to figure out how to do it.
It's back to what we started with.
So back to your $200, I think you got to have a strategy. You got to be smart about it. I tell people all the time, don't spend money on your business. Your business has to invest in itself.
I don't think $200 is going to get you a Cadillac.
It's not even going to get you an Uber.
Right.
Maybe.
Well, there you go. Uber.
You got to go short
distances. But that's great advice.
Figure out, even if it is $200 or $2,000, what's the best use to get the word out about you? Because the difference is you're hanging a shingle if you're going into business for yourself. Right. But guess what? We've talked about several things today that cost no money, even if I didn't have the $200. I'd pay my cell phone bill. I guess that's what I do out of the $200 because I need to get on the phone talking to people and getting out belly to belly. We are a relationship-based business. Exactly. Get out from behind the office and get out there in front of people.
Well, that leads
Whether it be churches, schools, kids' sporting events. Tonight I'm going to my kids' football practice tonight. I don't even sell real estate directly anymore. It's indirect. And I get referrals just because people want to talk about our industry, what we do. And that's what
that takes
get your face in the place.
Right. And that face in the place. Love it. Face in the place. Perfect. So the next one is, other than the cell phone, because just like you said, that is the best tool. What do you think is the best, or what is your most favorite, not even the best, but maybe your favorite tool in real estate, whether it's a CRM, an app?
Because I do like pretty things, I think one of our most successful things that we can do as agents is to honestly move a little bit away from technology, because so many of them do that. But here's what I do. Don't abandon the mailbox. The agents that we have in our office and honestly in our company that will mail to a core group of people that they have relationships with. I'm not talking about a database of addresses. I'm talking about a list of relationships. And I don't care if that's 150 people or 200 people. I think it's critical that a beautiful piece go in their mailbox every month that is something of value to them. Whether that be a new house that's listed that's kind of in their market area that you've done. Things that you would do from a standpoint of marketing their house, things that they can do to help improve their value for their house, etc. But things that are pretty, because I think it becomes a memory point. Memory points to me are those things that and visual. And something they can I want the touch. See, I want the shine on it, the touch feel.
Touch it,
because
feel it.
It
That's
indicates
an experience.
Quality. Okay, and
branding.
branding, and we could check off the list on all those different things. But that monthly has to happen in order for you to be on that top 5 list to be tied. Okay, it has to happen.
That's part of the
so
that's part of the tide strategy.
Is critical.
If there's one book you would recommend our listeners read, what's that book?
It's an oldie, but to me it's a goodie. It is Stephen Covey's 7 Habits of Highly Successful People.
And why?
And I refer to that all the time because there's a lot of different sections in there that are real important. Like with agents, I'll tell you how the book starts out. There's a section in the book where it starts talking about you being in the back of a room and you're seeing your friends and family there, et cetera, and you're trying to figure out what they're gathered there for. I'm kind of cutting you the chase, but I'm telling you, they're actually there at your funeral. Okay? And the question that you are to ask yourself is, how would you want to be described? I think being real estate agents, we have a tough time in managing our time and balancing time, let's say, between family and work. You know, you've got a husband who's in this business as well, albeit on the commercial side. You've got beautiful children that are in the business. This business can be all-encompassing. But at the end of the day, when people are up there talking about you, eulogizing you, is it that you want to say that Jerry was the best real estate agent in the world? Or is it that you want to hear Greg say that Jerry was the best wife I could ever have? And you want the kids to sit there and talk about mom, you know? I think it helps put things in perspective for you. The other chapter that I like in there, and we've kind of alluded to this today on the listening front, but it is to seek first to understand before being understood. That is the key to, I think, working best with clients and negotiating. There's a lot of good things in that book, but I think those are some good takeaways for our industry.
You may have just answered the last question. If there's one thing you want our listeners to take from this interview, what would it be?
I think you have to be patient. You know, this doesn't come, success does not come at the same pace to everybody coming in. Each relationship with your clients.
That's easy for you to say, Bill.
Well, even with your clients, though, some clients you're going to find a house real quickly, some it's going to take a long time. You've got to be patient and not let your emotions get to you.
Well, not be
really
attached.
Understand where people are coming from.
It really becomes, in this business, you hear people talk about, you know, people have this assumption that we're focused on the commission, and it really is nothing. That's not it at all. It becomes
it's a
understanding what your
byproduct
client
of
wants.
The value that you're providing to a client is what we get paid for. But as you know, there's a lot of work that we put in and day out that we don't actually get paid for. So, you know, ultimately on a commission, do we get a nice check? We absolutely do. But we're really paid for the body of work that we do, not for that one transaction.
Exactly.
We're paid for the ones that don't come together. We're paid for all the, you know, call it the free advice along the way that we do. A lot of things like that. And honestly, I think a lot of us, like yourself, give back to a lot of charities and things out there because we are very visible in our communities, and our communities count on us to make a difference. And so those aren't things that we get paid for. Those are things we're doing because it's the right thing to do. So you pay it forward.
Wow, you're amazing, Bill. Thank you so much. This has been great.
Good. Well, thank you very much for inviting me to be a part of it. It's been good. So,
thank you.
Thank you.